Welcome back, everyone, to the Mom with Moms podcast. We are here today at Bell Works in Homedale, celebrating and really leaning into Women's History Month. Really discussing an important topic today, I think, in our mission to continue to help and support moms in our community and bring to light resources that are available to you, the good, the bad, whether you're going through good times or not. We are really trying to highlight different resources that are available to you, which brings me to our guest today, Courtney Gilmartin. Thank you so much for joining us. She is the founder of New Jersey Protective Moms. We're going to be discussing a little bit about what you're doing to help moms in our community, more about your background, and also resources available for moms and women going through domestic violence situations in our community. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me where you're from.
So I live in Brielle. I have two children. They are 14 and soon to be 12, so 8th and 6th grade. So definitely interesting years.
Yeah, I don't know. Is that tween? No, they're teens. So the young teens and the old teens are different, in my opinion.
Yeah. My daughter's going into high school next year, so that's a whole new world for the mom territory, right?
Yes. I've been through it with my son. He's now moved out, but girls, I think, are different with like that age. So I'm not ready for that.
I know. We just bought her and all her friends. The moms were in a group chat. We bought them the See Here Now tickets.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they're like sold out already.
I know. And I was just saying, I'm not ready for this.
No, I am not prepared for that.
Yeah.
Like I'm not a big crowd person, so I don't like that. Just gives me anxiety. So I would not personally go to See Her Now. My sister goes, but I could see then if you have to bring your kids, that would be like my anxiety level would be that high. But I'm sure she's excited.
They are, but I'm just not ready for that phase. I'm like, where did my baby go?
Yeah, I know. It happens like very quickly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you live in Brielle?
Yes.
And tell me about your organization, a little bit about why you started it and your background.
So the organization, is truly like a grassroots from the ground, from nothing, built from rubble and ashes. A good friend of mine, we connected on Instagram just over bonding through posts on post-separation abuse, the abuse that continues when you leave an abusive marriage through the court, mostly facilitated through family court. So she's also from New Jersey. She's an attorney. She lives up north. So we started to reach out to senators and legislators, and we wanted to really get some legislative reform started in New Jersey to help victims of domestic violence and kind of reshape the way family court treats victims of DV, because there's immense opportunity there, and there's just a lot of struggles that victims face when they leave and they enter the family court system, especially if they have children with an abusive partner. Mm-hmm. So we found that a lot of the response we were getting was kind of lukewarm, so we felt as though organizing would make us a much more powerful force and something that would gather more attention and would help us attract other moms, and we could kind of mobilize and start to really scale our impact that way. So that's how we started. We focus mostly on awareness, advocacy, education, and we really want to work with the legislation to get some key laws that we have on our radar passed. We got one passed. It was signed by Governor Murphy on December 8th. Wow. So that was huge. It was 2 years in the making of us emailing, calling, begging, pleading, testifying in front of the Senate and the Assembly to get that passed. Yeah.
And do you have any experience doing this? How did you know kind of even where to start?
So in my previous life when I was young, I left college because I found it boring, and I actually owned a tanning salon and spray tan salon for 11 years. So there was some legislation that was being passed by New Jersey that was going to impact my business. So I connected with some lobbyists in New Jersey that were kind of helping me navigate how the process works. So I had some background there. Mm-hmm. I hadn't been, as involved as I was, because we had a lobbying organization working on behalf of tanning salon owners that was doing a majority of the outreach for us. But with this effort, we were doing it all on our own. So we knew enough, and we were able to partner the beauty of social media is you can really connect easily with people. So we connected with moms from other states. Connecticut has a really powerful organization called Connecticut Protective Moms, and other states do as well. So we connected with them. We got some insight. We connected with the New Jersey Coalition to End Domestic Violence. They're very active in the legislative realm. So we had some partnership for sure, and then just personal outreach to senators and assemblymen. People are always like, well, how do you start? I'm like, well, they're elected officials. They should want to talk to their
constituents.
Constituents. So I'm like, you gotta just reach out to them, go to events, try to see where they're at. They all have usually like assistants, so you can try to reach out to them, and sometimes they'll call you back, especially if it's something that you have seen that they've voted on or have an interest in, or they've sponsored bills that kind of are in the realm of DV or whatever, you're working on. So that's how it started. The law is basically that it codifies non-physical abuse as domestic abuse in New Jersey. So we were the 5th state to pass it. So it essentially makes coercive control, which is a subset of behaviors, domestic abuse, which is very helpful for victims. There's a significant gap when you go into family court, what the court views as domestic abuse versus what perpetrators of domestic abuse actually do. So like financial abuse, controlling, monitoring, trying to keep you isolated from people, the name calling, the disparaging, the degrading, the humiliation, all of that. That subset of behavior doesn't fit with obviously the physical violence model. And when you go into the harassment, realm of DV, it doesn't really fit the state statute for harassment. It's really hard to prove that in family court. So this law helps to really, there's a list of behaviors that the state has to consider as coercive control, and then it has to be taken into consideration when a judge is looking at the facts of the case and is determining whether a final restraining order is needed in the case or not. So that was our first hurdle, and this year we're really hoping to start work on a custody-focused bill that's going to take domestic violence into consideration when determining child custody and in contested custody cases.
Interesting. Okay. So is there a why behind why you've decided to start this organization and to help moms?
Yeah, so I got separated in 2016 and then divorced in 2017, and afterwards I quickly realized that family court was a weapon that my ex-husband was using against me, and the children unfortunately were pretty much pawns in a lot of the behaviors that he was doing. There's a very pro-contact culture in family court, which is understandable. It's 2 parents, there's children involved. But when you have someone who is a domestic abuser and they are insistent on being antagonistic or inappropriate or disparaging, there becomes this constant method for them to use to harass their partner. So that started to happen with my ex-husband. We had various issues, and I just saw the pitfalls that I face and other moms face when I talk to them. And I saw also a tremendous amount of moms who flat out just wouldn't fight the fight because they knew it probably wouldn't be beneficial to them. It's extremely financially depleting to victims that have to fight this. Family court is very time consuming and lawyers are very expensive. Fees can range from $350 to $500 an hour or more. And there's a lot of fear as well because the power dynamic in these relationships is such that the perpetrator, imposes a lot of fear and threatens and postures and will threaten, I'll take the kids away, I'll tell everyone you're crazy. So there's this tendency for moms to kind of shy back and just feel trapped in the system. And that's something I really wanted to try to fight to change.
So it's incredible work that you're doing. And I know that there are a lot of moms, like you said, that it's really fear-based out of, a lot of different factors, right? Of, fear of being divorced, fear of, change of life, even though you're, in a really shitty situation. But at the same time, taking the steps to get out of it can be like soul sucking. And So every situation is different, right? And every circumstance is different. But I know there's some organizations within the community who you can go for help. I know 180 Turning Lives Around is one of them where you can seek shelter there and they offer protection and stuff. But what are some actionable items that you would encourage moms to be aware of in terms of like resources available to them, why not, how not to be afraid, not why not, but how maybe perhaps not to be as afraid to help them get out of that situation?
I think for me, the biggest opportunity I see, and some people don't have this privilege, is they need to have financial resources of some kind to be able to leave and safeguard their children in some capacity. Which I know is hard for some women who have maybe given up their career to raise their children, and that's certainly something that I have tremendous empathy for, because not only is it a noble thing to do, it's also unfortunately a way that some of these perpetrators will essentially isolate their victims and make it so they can't leave.
And manipulate, right?
Yeah. So if you can and you have the means and you have a career and you feel as though your relationship maybe isn't healthy or isn't in a good place, I would say definitely consider keeping that career at all costs, have your own savings, and there's a tremendous amount of planning that you can do before you actually go to leave. But definitely having a real plan in place when you do go to leave, because that's when domestic violence perpetrators will usually escalate, and that's usually the most dangerous time for victims because they're losing that sense of control. So you have to also go in, I think, with eyes wide open. So getting yourself a really good therapist, really talking through the different scenarios that could play out. And the hardest thing for victims, too, that I see is there's a sense of questioning yourself in these dynamics. So that really erodes away at people's strength when they go to leave, or ability to make really critical decisions when they do leave. So trying in whatever capacity that you can to lean into, your truth and how you feel and the decisions you feel that you're making to safeguard you and your children, follow your instinct. I always say, your abuser best. Like, you can have lawyers telling you all the things in the world that you think you want to hear, but what makes them tick, what will make them angry, what will maybe work, what won't. So always follow your intuition. In terms of resources, 180 is there. It's a very good resource. They have court liaisons. If you can't get counsel, you can't afford an attorney, there is resources at Monmouth County Court and other courthouses. You can ask for the self-help desk. They can help you to a degree, but they can't give you legal advice. But there's a ton of experts, and again, the blessing and the curse of social media is that there are a ton of experts out there who really do offer a lot of advice. You can try to work with lawyers on like a per diem basis where you just pay them to review documents. There's also other, strategists out there that will help you craft your language and whatnot that can be more cost effective. But really understanding the situation you're in, I think helps. For me, that helped. I really, did some research. I read as much as I could. I read Lundy Bancroft changed my life. There's a book, Why Does He Do That? And it's really from the minds of why these perpetrators act this way. So I think knowledge is power. It can't hurt.
Did that give you, I don't want to say the right word is compassion, or maybe perhaps empathy, or just like a deeper understanding as to how their brain works? Is that kind of
I think
clarity?
Clarity. It's definitely validating.
Okay.
Which I think is a huge thing that victims need. They need that validation because, so much of the rhetoric that victims hear is you're crazy, you're making it up, I don't know why you act that way.
And gaslighting and all that. Yeah.
So they need that validation. It helps build strength to be able to leave. So, I think there's a lot of emotion. Sometimes, you're raw. Sometimes you feel bad. I think in the beginning I felt bad for a lot of the things my ex-husband was doing. But as time has gone on, my empathy has definitely, been tested, because at a certain point you have to be like, okay, but this is what's happening. This is what you continue to do.
And it's not healthy for you and for your children.
Right.
Right.
So I think it will help in terms of that for victims. But, it's definitely a scary time. I think having friends that you can lean on, or family, it doesn't have to be everybody. You don't have to tell everyone. There's a lot of shame that goes along with this. A lot of people don't want to share. So if you can find one person that you can really lean on or tell your truth to, that is really critical, I think, too, for victims. But, I think Christine Cocciola is a great resource. Dr. Cocciola, she's in Connecticut. Dr. Ramani just came out with a new book. She's excellent. There's a lot of experts out there. Evan Stark is really, really great. He's really the driving factor behind coercive control and the whole non-physical power dynamic in, IPV, they call it sometimes, or domestic abuse. So those are some good resources as well. And I have a tremendous amount of resources on my website that I linked for people. I have books, I have trusted professionals and clinicians, and I have a lot of research studies there linked for people to be able to educate themselves, because I wanted to give moms kind of a resource center where they could go and pull what they need.
Okay. I'm sure you've seen the series on Netflix, Made, which I thought was so well done and just, really an interesting series, and, definitely probably gave a good spotlight to organizations like yours, and perhaps hope to so many women across the country and I'd assume the world. What does it look like for a mom who maybe, like you described, is preparing to leave, but then like that's a big transition period where things get amplified and very can be perhaps scary. They do have shelters available to them. Does that include moms that are being faced with some type of coercive control, meaning that you don't necessarily have to be getting physically hit to be able to seek shelter with your family, correct?
Yeah, so I think right now the problem is the resources are so limited, and a lot of these shelters are full, that they're really the hierarchy there is people that are in that physical immediate danger and have had physical violence, because I think it's much more prevalent than people realize. Like the sheer volume of people that need to leave abusive relationships now, they're saying statistically it's 1 in 2.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
It was 1 in 3. They tossed around 1 in 3, 1 in 4, but they're leaning more and more towards 1 in 2 now. Yeah.
Wow.
And the pandemic definitely skyrocketed a lot of those numbers. So I think that's the issue. Like if someone is in immediate physical danger, and the court system is, unfortunately, and a lot of the systems that support survivors are still slow to catch on to the dangers of coercive control perpetrators, and they really lean in more towards that physical violence model and kind of see that it's more important. The problem with coercive controlling abusers is a lot of it is insidious, it's hidden, it's behind closed doors, people don't realize, and then you get these headlines like, loving dad kills family, neighbors devastated. And then when you really start peeling back the layers of the onion and you read between the lines in the newspaper article, you always see like, oh, he was controlling, and he was, he would kind of get mad at strange things, but I always just thought he was stressed out. Like those are definitely
like warning signs.
And unfortunately for many people, moms and children, it's just things happen and it's just then far too late. Right. So I think it's a systemic problem that a lot of states face. The funding for victims to be able to have a safe place to stay is definitely tough. And you would be surprised, a lot of the budget in New Jersey goes towards batterers programs to help support the abusers. Anger
management and all of that, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, help support them get better, which, we could
makes sense to a degree, but yeah.
I mean, the prognosis is very, very, very grim for them to get better.
Interesting. So, okay.
Revictimization is very, very high. A lot of these perpetrators do other things. There's a whole subset of a lot of them engage in stalking or harassment or physical violence or non-physical violence, other things that are problematic in society. So I think the emphasis, and that's part of what we kind of want to start really focusing on more, is fundraising, because we want to see a majority of the resources go to protective moms, because the only way to truly break the cycle is to really get in at the ground level and protect the kids from continuing to see this abusive behavior go on.
Yeah.
Protective moms and victims shouldn't leave the family court system, financially compromised and with PTSD or CPTSD because they tried to protect their kids. That's not fair. That's not doing a service to anyone, because
and it's not going to get them anywhere because it's at the end of the day, the things, everything costs money. So if you don't have the means to be able to exit, right? Let's talk a little bit about what is encouraged, or maybe we can't even speak to it. I know every circumstance is different, but if you are in a situation and maybe you haven't had the chance to plan, but maybe you really need to leave and there aren't a lot of resources, if you both own the home together, or even if you rent together, is it ideal to leave? Do you, and also then, I know sometimes moms don't want to make a big fuss or call the cops, right? They don't want to involve the legal system. They don't want that stigma behind them. So getting the person out of the house can be challenging. But is it better for them to just pick up and leave, or is it better for you to stay and stand your ground and have that person exit the home?
I think it depends, and I think that's where someone like Dr. Ramani in her new book talks a lot about understanding the person that you're dealing with, and you being able to, basically you have to just come to a point where you're like, okay, I'm going to accept this, and this is the relationship. Yeah. Or I need to make a change and I'm going to have to do something, right? But you have to do that safely. So unfortunately, I feel like there's no good answer, and that's the hard part of doing this work. I get messages all day in my inbox, just heartbreaking emails, and I wish I could help every single one, but of course I can't at this point in time. But finding an attorney, if you have the means, that understands the dynamic and is going to advocate really strongly for you, is also important. And if there's physical abuse, so I always say, you definitely, if you can, you need to call the police and definitely, have seek safety.
Documented and all of that. Does that helpful? Anything that's documented?
It's such a double-edged sword, because again, these people that we're dealing with are so adversarial in nature. They're aggressive. They can't take any accountability. They like to place blame, and they will weaponize information. So if you file a police report, they're going to read it. They're going to use that against you. They're probably going to get mad. Any filings in court, both parties have to read. So anything you say can and will quite literally be used against you, right? Any professional that gets involved and writes a report to the court, you are both seen. So they're going to see what people think of them or what they think of you. And then it kind of snowballs into this really challenging situation for moms. And I don't want to scare people either, but I think going in with eyes wide open is better than
finding out and being completely
blindsided.
And also it can just debilitate you, right? If not knowing, and then just having a setback and then perhaps going back, right? In that series Made, when she has the friend who she's, thinking that she's left, and then she runs into her and she doesn't know she doesn't know who she is. So a similar situation where you just have such a setback that it's I may as well live in this because it's too hard to get out.
Right. And that's, they say statistically it takes someone 7 times to leave. And it's not so much, there's 2 factors at play there. There's the emotional bond and the fear and the shame and all of that goes into it. And then there's also a safety issue. It takes people many times to leave because they have to do so safely. So a lot of times going back is safer than leaving and staying out. So if you're, dealing with a friend, family member, sister, anyone that's dealing with this, try to have space and empathy for them, knowing that it may not be that they want to go back. It may literally quite be that it's safer to go back at that time.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Talking about safety, what is your opinion about restraining orders? Do you find that, it's just like a weapon that can be used for both parties? Are they effective? Is it circumstantial?
Largely circumstantial. I think there is a systemic issue across the board with how domestic violence is treated, and that's not going to be solved if we, just picked apart restraining orders. I think they work to a degree in New Jersey because they are for life, and that's really important. In a lot of other states, you have to go every year or 2 years to try to, get it extended. But it also makes it significantly more difficult in New Jersey to get a restraining order because it is for life. The judges weigh it very, very, thoughtfully. And in my case, personally, I've had 4 that were overturned in court. So And, the court is well aware of the things that have gone on, and I've had third-party assessments that substantiate domestic abuse, but yet I still can't get the restraining order.
So there's a temporary one, right? And then the way it works in New Jersey, the permanent one cannot be changed. So once you have a permanent one, or has that changed?
Yeah, that's why it's for life. So it can be changed, but the petitioner would have to go and voluntarily be like, okay, I don't want this restraining order anymore.
Got it. Okay.
There would be a hearing. It doesn't just expire. There's no expiration date. And there are limitations when someone has a restraining order that are, a factor. They're on a registry. It will come up, for example, when they get pulled over. They have to go through different precautions in airports when they're traveling, and then they can't have any firearms in the state of New Jersey either. So, at the end of the day, sadly, when you read, a lot of newspaper articles or you listen to these horrible stories, a lot of them had restraining orders and they were overturned. I think it's a case-by-case basis. It's important to just know that the individuals that we're dealing with can escalate quickly. They're likely to be triggered quickly. They're probably dangerous people. So will a piece of paper stop them? Some of them probably not, which is, scary. But I definitely think there's more good than bad when people really need them. Mm-hmm. And the court looks at, and this is also another problem, in New Jersey's family court, they really look at a victim of domestic violence as someone who has a permanent restraining order.
Okay.
So everyone else that may have significant domestic violence happening in their family, or there's a coercive control dynamic within the family, that isn't really officially seen as domestic abuse because there is no final restraining order, which is why that law we got passed was so important, because hopefully it'll help people get restraining orders that they need.
Okay. Do you find that a restraining order is necessary for most situations to kind of navigate post relationship?
It can make it better or worse, because when you have a restraining order, there's limitations on communication, which can be, pro or con, because then attorneys get involved and then it's very expensive. And, I feel like the more cooks in the kitchen sometimes, and you're dealing with 4 opinions, not 2, like you and the co-parent, and now you have your lawyer, his lawyer, and him. Mm-hmm. It definitely helps, but it's a tough process. The victims have to go, they have to share what happened. So again, that element of shame, that fear, there's a fear of retaliation. There's a fear if you don't get the final restraining order, they're going to know about it. You're going to go to a trial. Are they going to be more mad? You could go through a trial and the judge could overturn the restraining order and you're just supposed to go back like everything's normal. So I definitely say always, talk to a lawyer, talk to someone who has significant experience in restraining orders. A lot of family law attorneys won't do restraining order hearings anymore. They're referring them out to criminal attorneys. So it's definitely something that people should really, really take deep consideration in before they proceed with that. For sure, I would definitely seek legal advice, because it's not an easy process by any stretch of the imagination. There's this narrative out there that I don't know how it really started, but restraining orders are weaponized or they're used in divorce, to get someone out of the house or to get a leg up in custody. And I find a lot of that is just in line with people victim blaming and people who are really, domestic violence perpetrators trying to shift that narrative well, I didn't really do anything. She's just trying to punish me and leave me and take the kids from me and use this restraining order as a way to do that. And that's just sadly not the case. A lot of times there has been a long-standing pattern of coercive control and maybe even physical violence in the home.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What do you think needs to change in the court system? I'm sure there's a lot, but what are some of the real part of your mission in terms of, making change and helping moms navigate through this challenging time?
So I think for me, one of the big concerns that I have is there's this parental alienation, father's rights camp, where anytime abuse allegations are raised in court, and a father latches onto, well, she's lying, she's making it all up, she's alienating me from the kids, it gains traction. And Joan Myers out of Georgetown Law School did a really, groundbreaking research study on this, where women who claimed abuse in family court and then their ex-spouse alleged alienation lost custody like exponentially, almost 100% of the time.
Okay.
We're seeing a lot of just straight up ignoring valid abuse concerns for children, and that pro-contact culture in family court really needs to change. They really, when you look at the law in New Jersey, they're supposed to take domestic violence factors into consideration for child custody. There's no real clear-cut explanation on how that's weighted, and that factor is typically, greatly overlooked, and we're putting kids in really dangerous situations, and that should never happen. The family court, is intended to help people, and it really does help most people. Like, we're talking about the small subset of abusive dynamics, contested custody, post-separation abuse. But when you have a litigious person that wants to continue litigation as a means to punish someone for leaving, the court shouldn't be a mechanism for them to do so. There needs to be like a cultural change in that regard. If someone is filing, motion after motion and they've been divorced for 7 years, family court needs to be equipped to be like, okay, wait, what is going on here? In my case, I'll be divorced 7 years in a few weeks, and we were in court last year, I think 16 times. We've taken up a tremendous amount of the county's resources, and every expert involves time, and it's just from that perspective, let's take me out of the equation, but like from that alone really needs to be something that needs to be looked at.
Interesting.
Because, judges are public officials, they're very busy, I hear horror stories about people's trials being, they're on a wait list for like a year trying to get into family court. So,
wow.
Yeah, the resources are, it's tough. There was a judge shortage up north. They were stopping all family court hearings for a few months. So they were in a crisis up there, a few counties. So it's definitely something that the court needs to really take a deep look at. There are a few individuals in the state that are looking to put together a task force to really look at the systemic problems of family court and try to make recommendations that would help it, function better, and definitely help families in a situation, similar to mine. So that's our hope. That's a really big lift and a really big change. There needs to be a shift, but I do feel like it's starting. I think we're in like the very infantile stages of it, though, so it's probably going to be a while.
Interesting. Okay. Well, you're an incredible advocate for women, and obviously have gone through a tremendous ordeal. My heart goes out to you. I know just through the power of community that moms, really do lean on each other, and like you said, the moms that have like me, people in their lives that they can perhaps vent to and just fall down onto, because it's an awful thing to go through, and does have a lot of, I think, stigmatization to it, and just shame, right? And that is it doesn't there's no picking and choosing who goes through this. You can be a very accomplished person and have and not know that like you're in a horrible marriage, or you are in a new marriage and maybe you just didn't even like see the red flags. So or partnership, right? What are some things that moms can do to like help to get involved? I know you mentioned fundraising. Are you at that stage at all?
Not yet, but we want to be soon. So we have the website, NewJerseyProtectiveMoms.org. I have a contact us form there for people that want to get involved. We're going to put together a newsletter. We have a private Facebook group if anyone wants to join. And
that's nice. So people can go on and like talk about maybe even anonymously their experience. Yeah. Okay, that's great.
Yeah, and I want to work towards like a buddy program, because I found that it's most helpful when you can lock up with someone who's kind of in the same stage of the process. I'm so far removed, but I still have ongoing custody issues, so it's helpful for me to really talk with other moms that have experienced that, whereas I honestly couldn't even remember the beginning stages of my divorce at this point. So sometimes people ask me things and I'm like, I don't.
It was a blur.
Yeah,
right?
it's a blur at this point. So, I want to really try to partner people up, knowing that they're in a safe space with other people that are kind of in the same phase of the divorce, because I think that's a critical piece. And then I have found tremendous power in my own self-healing. I think victims, to your point before, you said that it can happen to anyone, and that's true. And studies have shown, and I'm glad that studies like this are coming out, that victims of domestic abuse are empathetic and loving and kind and caring. Like, they are targeted for a reason, because they embody all these qualities that the perpetrators want. So victims are amazing people. They're kind people. They want to help. A lot of them are very selfless. A lot of moms I know have bankrupted themselves to save, protect their children. So, and you see it in the advocacy space too. I would say 95% of people that I meet in this work are victims, or their mom was a victim, or their sister was a victim, or someone was a victim. So they want to give back. So I always tell victims, like, lean into your personal power. That transformation of really becoming the person that you want to be is so powerful. Like, because when you're in a relationship where there's this abusive dynamic or unhealthy dynamic, you shrink yourself to try to make the other person happy. So there's a lot of time invested in that other person, and you're not investing in yourself. So I always say, like, lean into what makes you happy. That's going to make you a better mom. Yes, it's horrible that you have to deal with lawyers and court and interviews, and your children are a mess. But if your children can see you happy for 10 minutes a day, or have a peaceful home, even 50% of the time, and that's what I tell women, like, if you can give your children a peaceful house 50% of the time, that's much better than an unhealthy house 100% of the time.
Right.
Getting there is a challenge. But, when I was going through the beginning stages of when it got really bad, which was a few years ago, the judge actually flipped custody in my case. So I only was able to see my children Tuesday and Wednesday after school for 7 months, because my ex said I was alienating the children from him, which obviously wasn't true. But during that 7 months, it was extremely painful and awful. And I just realized that I really had to lean into what brings me joy. So that's when I started volunteering, and I joined, a local women's group, because I wanted to partner with other, nonprofits that were able to really get into the domestic violence organizations, because for privacy reasons, a lot of them are kind of hard to infiltrate, which rightfully so. So that was important to me. That's what fed my soul. I would say you don't have to go into the advocacy space, but if you love to draw or paint or do yoga or go for walks or surf, a friend of mine in Brielle has another really wonderful organization called The Ocean is Female, and she's all about, the power of the ocean and healing, and she does surf camps for survivors, and anything that really speaks to you, do, because that's when you really find power and peace. Because, like I said, you've been living in this relationship where you had to give so much of yourself to someone else.
Yeah, it's like constant state of chaos and turmoil.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that's helpful. There's a whole transformative process that victim survivors go through when they leave these relationships, and really seeing that in others that I've talked throughout their time getting divorced is, I think, really, really special, and what makes me happy, seeing women go back to school or go back to work or get their own house, their own car. I was reading this story the other day on Facebook. This woman was saying that her ex-husband used to write down her odometer every day. He knew how far her work was, and he would only give her $10 in gas every day, because he wanted to control, her coming and going, so she could only go to work and come home.
Wow.
He took all of the money when they got divorced, and she left him. She worked hard. She got a new job. She was doing great. She bought her own car, and she posted a picture of it, and it was just incredible to see. I get chills talking about it now, because it's those small things that people don't see.
Yes.
That really, that day was probably one of the happiest days for her. And I took a screenshot and sent it to my co-founder, and I'm like, this is the reality of domestic abuse that people don't understand.
Right.
But that is incredibly powerful. And listen, it took me a long time. I've moved twice. I'm in a house now that my kids and I love, that I never thought I'd be able to be in. You know, I'm in a position where I can help other people, and that brings me joy and makes me happy. But 6 years ago, if you told me I'd be sitting here doing this, I probably would have never saw the light at the end of the tunnel.
Right, right. I think that's so important to tell those stories and to, I don't know if the correct phrase would be a silver lining, but I always tell my kids there's always something to look forward to, and there's always good, right? So to look at in each day, and that is possible to get out of it. And unfortunately, whether way you look at it or not, it does make you stronger, and that you have the power within you to keep going and to get out of it and to create a life that is for you, right? You're crafted for you and your happiness,
Right?
And that's the point, is that we don't need to live like hating our lives every day and under someone's thumb, or
Right.
whatever the circumstances. But that's so inspiring, and I really hope that women are listening and follow you. And if there's anything that we can do to get involved to help you fundraise and bring awareness to any events that you're planning in the future, we're happy to get involved. I think that like you said, those statistics are staggering, and there's I'm sure a lot more that we can do together as a community for moms in Monmouth County and New Jersey, and of course across the country. With the state of the world right now, we really need to lean on each other and just be connected and on one page, right? So let's get the court system figured out at least, or try, right?
Yeah.
But thank you. So where can everyone find you?
So I am on NewJerseyProtectiveMoms.org. That's our website. Like I said, contact us. Goes right to my inbox, and I get back to everybody. I can add you to the private Facebook group. You won't be able to find it because it's private. And I'll start, I'm going to start the bulk mailing list and hopefully, partner with other organizations to have events. I myself am on Instagram and Facebook, Courtney Gilmartin. You can find me there. My Instagram's public so people can find me. I wanted to remove as many blockers for people because I think that's also important. So, I'm an open book. I text and email people all the time. I have moms texting me all the time for advice or questions on things. So I'm here to help as much as I can. And yeah, I think it's, there's strength in numbers. We're really going to start upping our outreach to senators on this custody bill. So the more moms that we can get involved from all over New Jersey will be super helpful because we'll need people to reach out to their elected officials.
Okay. And if there are moms listening right now that are, kind of in a really bad situation and need to get help, where do they go to first?
So I would definitely call the domestic abuse hotline, the 1-800 number. All those resources are also on our website, or 180 Turning Lives Around. And, if you have a situation where the police are involved, 180 does have domestic violence victim advocates that can come out and talk to you and talk in more depth about the resources available. I am starting that program in April, so I'll be able to really help moms on the ground when that happens.
And they meet you pretty quickly. They come like
at that police station.
Yeah. So they really do you do have an advocate there, which is a great thing that is available to us. And I hope that more moms can know and spread the word. Even if you have a friend that is going through this, and maybe you can't, you're frustrated because it's like, well, why won't she leave him? There's a lot more that goes into it. So so you're doing such great work. And again, thank you so much for coming. We're going to link everything here in the text here so you can scroll down and find Courtney, find out how to follow her, how to get involved, how to help, and hopefully how to help yourself if you're going through a situation like this. So thank you for listening to a very special episode of the Monmouth Moms podcast, and be well.